All right, hello, and I want to welcome to the Butterfly Effect, Transformation Through Energy, Healing, and Spirituality, Erin Taylor, and she is a conscious parenting coach, and she's an author as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Carissa. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, and I love so much of your journey that you've shared with me. I think it's a huge thing to be able to share that with people. There's so many people out there that will be able to relate to your story. Are you okay with sharing a little bit about how you got to where you're at now, being a conscious parenting coach and an author?
Sure. When I was 11 years old, I knew that I wanted to help parents. I had a really wonderful relationship with my parents. And when I went to school and looked around, I was aware, even at that young age, that not everyone had that luxury of a wonderful home life.
Yeah.
And I knew at that point that I wanted to dedicate my life to trying whatever I could to help as many kids as I could to be able to have that wonderful, warm, loving connection with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I, grew up, went to school, went to college, went to graduate school. I got a master's degree in counseling psychology, and I worked as a therapist for about 20 years before going back to school to become certified as a parent coach, which is what I do now. And I absolutely love it because it gives me the opportunity to help parents connect more deeply with their children and build and create healthier relationships where everyone can thrive.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of like a lifelong dream come true and something that I saw when I was 11.
Yeah. I mean, you shared a few things with me. What were some of the things that you overcame on your journey that were challenging for you that this has been really supportive of? I think you shared a little bit about just being a mother yourself and what that journey was like for you.
Well, I guess I'd have to go back even a little further than what I shared with you. So when I was a senior in high school, my dad had a very serious accident at work, and he fell from a ladder and he had a very serious life-threatening head injury.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in a coma for 2 weeks, and he was in the ICU or the step down unit for another 2 weeks as he kind of came out of it. And
Yeah.
then he was in a rehab hospital for 2 months, and then he was in a day program for people with head injuries for a year after that. So it was a very, very serious, life altering event. And I remember, there was uh, it wasn't a given that he would survive this accident. It was very, very serious. And I remember being in the hospital with my mom and my two brothers and being there with my dad. And I remember my mom and my two brothers kind of wringing their hands with stress and worry and anxiety. And is he going to be okay? Is he going to make it? Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And I just had an unshakable belief that he would be fine. You could look back and call it youthful optimism or whatever, but I think I've pretty much always had that optimism my whole life,
Yeah.
that when a challenge comes, we'll just get through it. I mean, we'll just find a way, we'll figure it out, and we'll get through it. And so I never let go of the unshakable belief that he would come through that very serious accident and head injury. And he did ultimately. And we got another 20 years of living with him, which
Yeah.
was amazing and wonderful. And what a blessing it was. Uh, so I had that experience as a teenager, and that showed me that I had the grit and the optimism to kind of work my way through things.
Yeah.
And so that kind of just always sat in the background through my life. And then when my husband and I got married, we wanted to create a family, start building our family right away. And it didn't really work. It didn't really happen so much for us. So after 3 years, or I would say after a year of trying, or a year and a half, we went to a fertility specialist, and we ended up having to go through fertility treatments. And so 3 years into it, we finally went through IVF and experienced success. And then I got pregnant with my daughter, my oldest daughter, Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
And we found out. So I guess I should say before that, going through those years of fertility treatments were emotionally exhausting, because you get your hopes high up and then it doesn't work and they get dashed. And then you try again, you get your hopes up and they get dashed.
Yeah.
And it's just an exhausting roller coaster. And I would say that's probably a time in my life where my belief was a little bit shaky, much shakier than when my dad was in the hospital. But my husband, fortunately, had an unshakable faith and a belief that we would be able to become parents. So when I would express my worries and concerns and fears, he would always say, "There's nothing to worry about. Somehow, some way, it will happen. It will work out. I don't know how. Don't worry about it." And he was ultimately right. So we had success with IVF and had our daughter. But when we went to the 20-week ultrasound for her, we found out she had a very severe heart defect.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to meet with a surgeon, figure out what our plan was going to be when she would be born. And the plan was for her to have a series of 3 open heart surgeries where they would kind of she was born with half of her heart underdeveloped. So they basically had to take half of her heart. They would have had to take half of her heart and kind of build it to function like a whole heart, like kind of cut that half in half. So that was our plan all along. And then when she was born, a few hours after she was born, she had an apnea episode that was very brief, but it was long enough to cause severe brain damage. I suppose with an hours-old infant, you don't have to be deprived of oxygen very long before everything goes bad.
Yeah.
So she lost all of her basic reflexes: sucking, swallowing, coughing. Every EEG they did on her was grossly abnormal, like everything. It completely destroyed her functioning. And so we kept her in the CCU at the Children's Hospital, and kept hoping and praying that somehow, some way, some miracle would happen and she would start showing some normal signs or remember how to cough or suck or swallow. And sadly, she never did. And she ended up dying in my arms when she was 24 days old.
Yeah.
And that was a defining point in my life. I kind of look at my life as like BS and AS, like before Sydney and after Sydney.
Yeah.
I had that unshakable optimism always, from as long as I could remember.
Mm-hmm.
But when we found out about her heart, and it was halfway through my pregnancy, so I had another half to go. I could choose to be worried and stressed and miserable and negative, or I could choose the opposite. And I chose the opposite. I remember ordering, back then we had cassette tapes. There weren't even, I think there might have been CDs, but yeah, I guess there were, but the main technology was still cassette tapes. So I ordered a cassette tape of a guided meditation, and I did it every single night. And I prayed every single night. And if there was a possible way to will an outcome, I would have achieved it, because I don't think there's any stronger will than a will that a parent has, a mother has, for her child's well-being.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't, that was not the outcome that we experienced. She did not recover, she did not survive. And what I learned out of that, well, I learned a few things. Number one, the grit and the strength that I discovered in myself when I was a teenager, when my dad was injured,
Yeah.
came back. Like, I remembered how strong I was to be able to get through with that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I knew that I had the strength to get through this horrible, devastating loss. I also knew immediately, the day she died, I knew it. I said it to my husband. We have to make something good come of her death, because I will not allow her death to be in vain. I'm not going to just suffer this excruciating, devastating loss and have nothing come of it. And so the day that the day after she died on a Sunday morning. So on Monday, we went to the funeral home and to make the arrangements. And I remember when we arrived at the funeral home, it was gray and dreary and rainy and depressing. And we knew that after we took care of those details, we were going to go to the bank to open up an account, because we wanted to create a scholarship fund in her name. So
Mm-hmm.
when we went to the funeral home, it was gray and dreary and miserable, and we were miserable. And then when we left there to go to do this meaningful thing, when we walked out of the funeral home, the sun was shining and the rain had dried. So I saw that so deeply as a sign of hope. And we went to the bank, we opened the account, and then we ended up creating a foundation in her honor, and we ran it for 12 years. And we gave scholarships to kids going to college with heart defects. And then we sent younger heart kids to a specialized heart summer camp.
Yeah.
And so we did those two things. And so her life and death really taught me that when you go through troubling times in your life, you don't have to lay down and just be a victim of it and just say, why? Why is one of the most useless questions, in my opinion, that there is. Why did this happen?
Yeah.
Well, why are you going to spend your time trying to figure out why? Why don't you just figure out what is going to come of it?
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't have to just lay down and be a victim and ask why. You can say, okay, the as is that this thing has happened.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
What good can come from this? Because there can always be good that comes from a terrible situation. And so that's one of the big lessons that I learned.
Yeah.
Or lived.
Mm-hmm. That's so powerful. I mean, a lot of people in that situation would kind of, recluse a little bit and, kind of go. I mean, a lot of people I know would go into depression and not be able to shift, and it's hard to get people to understand that, when we do that, we're hurting ourselves. We have the opportunity to turn everything into a positive, and I'm so thankful that you were able to do that, because it's challenging in this world, and it's beautiful that you were able to support that many people and support people in that way from the situation that you had to go through. And there's just so much power in what you just shared with me, and I thank you for sharing that part of your journey, because I know it's not easy for a lot of people. I know there's a lot of people that will be able to relate to your story, and I'm sure you've offered a lot of people hope and inspired them to fight, and not necessarily fight, but surrender to what is given to them on their path and their journey. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. it is, I think, about surrender. That's the
Yeah.
first step, I would
Yeah.
say. You have to surrender to the situation. You know, this is what you have to face. You have to accept it. Acceptance isn't failure. It's not giving up in any way, shape, or form. It's just saying, well, this is what it is. I have to accept it. Now,
Yeah.
what can I do about it?
Hmm.
And I hope that my story gives people hope
Yeah.
because, you know, you might not get the loan that you're hoping for or the job that you want, or you might get laid off, or you might break your foot, or you might break up, you know, your significant other might break up with you, or, you know, a million other things that are kind of a big deal. They are kind of a big deal in life, but if you can kind of keep it in perspective and remember that there are so many horrible this sounds weirdly not positive, but there are so many horrible things that can happen in life, so many challenging issues that can come. And if your biggest challenge is you got a flat tire today, count yourself lucky,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think one key thing that you like in your story that you just shared is how you shifted something that was painful and tragic to you into part of your purpose today. I mean, it's it's amazing that you were able to do that. And I think for me, that's been the same thing. Like I've gone through a lot of stuff that I've been able to shift into realizing if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And I get to support people through it and let them know that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, the things that we go through in our life are a big part of our purpose and what will later on give us like some amazing moments and appreciation and gratitude and just keys to being able to support other people. And it feels really good to be able to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing that you're able to share that. You touched a little bit on meditation, and what kind of impact has meditation been for you, like made in your life? Because it sounds like it was a part of that journey in your healing process.
For sure. And it was meditation, I think, is the pathway into your heart and into your intuition. I really, really, really believe that. That is the way. Sometimes I think of intuition kind of like a little whisper, and it's a faint little voice, just so faint, and you barely can hear it a lot of times. And if there's too much noise around you, too much technology, social media, judgments, opinions of others, too much in your schedule,
Yeah.
just too much chaos, too much noise, you can't hear that little whisper. And then you can't hear the guidance. And I always tell people your intuition will never steer you wrong. It will absolutely never give you the wrong answer. But you have to learn how to hear it. You have to learn how to listen to it, and you have to learn how to hear it.
Yeah.
So you have to learn you have to learn what it sounds like to you, and then you have to be able to recognize it when it shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you might get a thought of, oh, maybe I should make this decision over that one.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know if that's your intuition speaking or your mind speaking?
Yeah.
So you really kind of have to, and I don't really have a formula for anybody that's
Yeah.
easy, but you really have to learn what your brain sounds like when it's having thoughts and what your intuition sounds like when it's whispering the guidance, the truth and the path for you. And so I think meditation is the clear path to hear that voice. You can either hear it in the meditation, or meditation allows you to hear it better when you're not meditating.
Yeah. I think it's so important that you shared that. And I mean, it really is. It's a journey of learning how to tune into that, especially if you haven't really realized that that is a part of us. We are like, we do have an intuition, and there's constantly our mind that's talking at us. For me, it took a big process of, and still, discerning like what is what. It's like, you know, for me, I had to learn how to trust myself because so long I was seeking outside of myself for all of the answers, when a
Yeah.
lot of it does come within. We are provided with our path and our purpose, and so many people are living the life of circumstances because of the way the world is ran today.
Hmm.
So thank you for sharing that, because, and also it's just, it is more like a whisper, so it's hard to know,
It
and
can
it
be very
really,
hard.
meditation is extremely helpful in quieting the mind. And I mean, for you, did you instantly take to meditation, or like, was it easy for you, or what was your process with that? When did you start using meditation?
Well, the first time I started meditating was when I was pregnant with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I used a guided meditation, which I absolutely love. There's a website called healthjourneys.com,
Uh-huh.
and they have some incredibly powerful, really good meditations. And they can be anywhere from a meditation for healthful sleep, for coming up against, you're coming up on a surgery that you have to have, or grieving the loss of a loved one, or going through cancer treatment. Like, there's a million different guided meditations they have, so I can't recommend that highly enough.
Yeah.
They're amazing. So my first experience with meditation was a guided meditation, and I think that's easier for people to start with when they're just starting out.
Yeah.
Now I'm at a point where most of my meditation, unless I'm in the mood for something different, like something specifically guided, most of my meditation is with an app on my phone. Um, it's called Insight Timer, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just, you set up a bell and the amount of time you want to meditate. You can choose the bell sound, and
Yeah.
then you hit go, and then the bell dings, and then when your time that you set is over, it dings again, and it's just, you just sit in silence. That can be really hard for people when they're just starting out, because a lot of people will think, well, I'm being flooded with all these thoughts, so I can't meditate. I'm not good at it. I'm a failure at it.
Yeah.
No, you're really not. You're just like everybody else. It's
Mm-hmm.
totally normal. You get flooded with thoughts. Only the, Buddhist monks up on the hill who meditate for 8 hours a day, those are the
Yeah.
only ones who might actually have a shot at, like, stopping the thoughts. But
Uh-huh.
for the rest of us, it's just a matter of going through the practice to try to slow our thoughts down, separate from our thoughts, see our thoughts as, that's not reality, that's just a thought. It might be true, it might be false, who knows, but it's just a thought.
Yeah.
So, but it can be hard to sit in silence, especially in our culture where we're just going, 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 and there's always the radio on, or a podcast, or the TV, or there's just something all the time. So I do encourage beginning meditators to start out with some kind of a guided meditation and kind of work their way into silent, even if it's a minute to begin with, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you think you can handle, and just build that muscle so that you can
Yeah.
do it longer.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to hear that, because it is, for me, in my experience, I definitely wouldn't have been able to just sit there for 20 minutes and meditate in silence. I was doing guided meditations, and I worked my way up to them. And was times where it was more challenging for me than others even to follow a guided meditation. So starting small could be huge, and you can build on it. It's like
Mhm.
it's the process of building a habit and releasing the one of overthinking, which we all do in this world, like you said. Um, I would love for you to share a little bit about your feelings around like using the word universe, because you shared a little bit with me about that. And I know there's a lot of people out there, um, that are on this journey of healing and awakening, and just connected. Like for me, I believe that everybody, as long as you're spiritually connected, it doesn't really matter what wordings you use. And so many people get caught up in that. And from my beliefs, we're all connected. And it doesn't matter what you call, what name you give it. So I would love for you to share about that, because I know a lot of people can relate.
Well, one of the things I want to say is that before I answer that question, going back to the intuition thing, because it's kind of so overlapping and interrelated.
Yeah.
I always tell, a lot of times as a coach, as a parent coach, parents will come to me looking for help and solutions to whatever the challenge is that they're dealing with their child. And what I try to help them to understand is that my job is not to give them the answers. My job is to facilitate them connecting to their intuition
Mm-hmm.
so that their inner compass can guide them.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make that point when you were talking earlier, and I didn't get a chance to. But as far as God and the universe, one of the other important things that I came to understand when my daughter died, the meditation and the effort that I put in before she was born was all focused on the outcome that I wanted. I wanted her to get through those surgeries. I wanted her to be fine. I wanted her to live as normal a life as possible. I mean, that's what any parent would wish for, right?
Yeah.
But my efforts were focused on achieving my vision of what the outcome should be.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she died, which was not in my vision, I didn't spend 1 second of effort thinking about that. I mean, I thought about it, but I wasn't trying to manifest that by any stretch.
Yeah.
But what I understood is that when I we can work towards a goal that we want to have, and that could be a business goal, it could be a personal goal, it could be wanting your child to live, it could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the healthiest way to do this in life is, and to manifest things in life, is to strive for what you want, but then detach from the outcome. So put the effort in and the intention, and don't get hung up on whether the outcome is the way you want it to be or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I learned from her is that, what I believe is that her time on this earth was meant to be short. That wasn't my choice by any stretch of the imagination, but I think I personally believe that we have multiple lifetimes and that we're on a soul's journey, and that each time we come around and come here in another life form, our soul is kind of signing up for a new chapter, the next chapter in their soul's journey.
Yeah.
And so some chapters that we sign up for, we say, well, I had an easy one last time. Okay, I'll take a hard one this time. Or last one was really hard. Let me have it easy this time. Because sometimes you can look at people and say, oh my gosh, they have so much suffering in their life. Or
Yeah.
you look at someone else and go, oh my gosh, why is everything so easy for them?
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask why, because you don't know what happened before they got here. Or you don't know what's happening when they leave. Who knows? But anyway, I do believe that this life form for her, this trip around the sun, was meant to be short. And so my desperate wishing and wanting and meditating and visioning and praying and hoping and whatever I could do to have the outcome that I wanted was not in the grander scheme of the existence of our species or life itself.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant, that wasn't the outcome that was meant for her. So that doesn't mean that my efforts were a failure. I learned how to really commit to what I wanted and go for it,
Yeah.
and put every ounce of my being into it. But I also learned that I'm not the person who gets to choose how things go.
Yeah.
I can choose what shirt I want to put on today, or, you know, what I want to eat for dinner, but the big things are not really our choice. And so that's another really important lesson that I learned through her life and death. So getting back to the whole God and universe thing, I started, I found myself drifting away from using the word God in my work several years ago, and I started using the word universe. to me, it's kind of the same thing. Those words are a little bit interchangeable, but
Yeah.
I felt like the word God had a lot of energy with it, and it can be a positive energy for some people, or it can be a triggering energy. What if they're atheist? What if they're Jewish? What if they're Muslim? What if they use a different word? So I use
Yeah.
God. Does that mean if they don't use the word God, does that mean they can't connect to what I'm saying because I'm not speaking their language?
Yeah.
So I decided to start using the word universe kind of to name this organizing force that I believe oversees this whole thing called life.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was a more generic use of the term that
Yeah.
would be less triggering for people.
Mhm.
And I also think that the most important thing is that you have a connection to that higher source. Whether you practice any form of organized religion or not, actually to me is somewhat irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because I've met a whole lot of practicing religious people who are not what I would strive to be.
Yeah.
They're phony and fake, and they're just not the model citizen, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then I've also met many religious people who are amazing, wonderful, selfless, generous, loving, kind, honest, honorable, everything. So I actually think that religion and spirituality have pretty much nothing to do with each other. I think religion is something that has been weaponized, and it's a way to keep people. This could be triggering for some people, but I'll just put
That's
it.
okay. I'm okay with it because I mean, from what you're saying, I stand for what you're saying. It divides us in a way.
It divides us, and it's almost like a system that, to me, people will probably be triggered by this, but it's almost like a system that man has created to keep men in boxes, humans in tight little boxes. We
Mhm.
need to control you, society, the leaders, whoever. We need the idea of an unleashed, completely free human being is terrifying to people in leadership.
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking of anyone in leadership in particular, but I'm just saying across the existence of humankind.
Yeah.
An unleashed free person is exactly what we need in this world, but it's exactly the kind of thing that scares leadership. So they put all these things into place to try to keep us nicely fitting in our little boxes, our box of
Clothed.
marriage and religion, and we're going to go to school,
Mhm.
and we're going to drive the speed limit, and we're going to, whatever.
Yeah.
So we get put in all these boxes, and I think religion is just another one of those boxes
Yeah.
that we get put in. And so it does divide us, because if I say I'm Catholic, which I'm not, but if I say I'm Catholic, well, what I'm actually saying is I'm Catholic. Are you?
Yeah.
Because if you're not, then I must be better than you.
Mhm.
Not that I'm trying to beat up on Catholics. It could be
Yeah.
any,
No.
right? If
Yeah.
I say I am blank religion, then that either means you're either with me or you're against me.
Mhm.
But how about if I just say I'm human? And so are you. Isn't that awesome? We're
Yeah.
both human.
Mhm.
Who cares what our religion is? Who cares if we don't even have a religion? It doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Are you trying to be a good person and kind to yourself and to others? Am I trying to be kind to myself and others? Am I trying to take care of the planet and animals? Are you? Okay, good. Let's just live.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that because that is something I totally feel aligned with what you're saying. And that's my message that I want to get to people in a way. Like, I do feel it's okay for people to have their religions, but again, I do feel like it kind of does put us in this box, and then it's hard for people to connect. It's just another thing to divide us. Because it's like, oh, you're this way, I'm that way. We don't mesh because of it in certain ways when we really all are connected. And I'm working to support people in becoming more free and get to know that like they are a creator, and in their heart there is so much more than what's on the outside. They're powerful, and for so long I lived a life not feeling that power, not being a creator because of things like that. So thank you so much for sharing that, because even though it will probably trigger some people, but it's truth. It's speaking truth. And sometimes that's challenging to do in this world because we are constantly judged and told we can't be us. So thank you for speaking truth into our audience. Yeah. I was like, is there anything else you wanted? We talked a little bit about the iceberg thing for conscious parenting, and I wanted you to be able to share a little bit about that.
I teach parents, a lot of times parents come to me and they're triggered over their child's behavior. I yell at them, they do X and I get mad and I yell. How can I stop? And I use this concept of an iceberg. If you imagine like a cross section of an iceberg and here's the water, and then you see a little tip of the iceberg up here, and this is actually representing the behavior of a child. So lying, whining, disrespect, talking back, all that kind of stuff, hitting siblings, whatever. That's what's going on that you see. But then under the water, there's this huge piece of what's going on that you don't see. And that can be easier things, like physical things, like are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they overstimulated, understimulated, things like that? Or do they need more attention? Do they feel capable? Has someone hurt their feelings? Are they embarrassed? Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the stuff we don't see.
Yeah.
And I teach parents that behavior is actually a form of communication. It's not the thing to focus on. It's actually come to tell us that there's some unmet need going on under the surface for our child. So if parents can start to see behavior in that way and make that shift, when the child's having a temper tantrum, rather than getting triggered and angry and trying to yell at the child, make them stop, send them to their room, whatever, they can instead put their detective hat on and say, why could my child be having a temper tantrum right now? What might be going on? What unmet need is there? And then they can look at the easy stuff, hunger, tired, stuff like that. If they don't come up with any answers there, then they can go deeper still into the emotional needs. And a lot of times, if you can figure out what the underlying need is and meet that need, the behavior either diminishes or disappears altogether without the need for punishment. And that's because the behavior no longer has a message to give you because the need has been met. So it's a very revolutionary way of parenting and raising our children. And once you kind of understand that concept, you also can start to look at everyone's behavior that way. Your own behavior is an iceberg, your significant other, your parents, your boss, your coworkers, your neighbor, your friends. Everyone's behavior is an iceberg. And so if we can look, if someone snaps at us, let's say, or gives us the finger while we're driving or something, rather than getting upset with that person, we can just think, oh, they must be having a really bad day that they're driving down the road and yelling at us. I feel terrible I'm sorry that person has had such a bad day.
Yeah.
But we don't have to get angry about it. We don't have to scream back through the window. We can just go, well, I offer you, I wish you blessings on this journey and I hope your day gets better.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to be angry about it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big, big, big key things that I help parents to understand. And it just makes their relationship with their child more fluid and easy and pleasant.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so important. Thank you for sharing that and supporting people through that, because I mean, a lot of why we aren't able to express who we are and be who we are is because, there's a lot of parents who have been misguided in the way that is helpful to support their kids and raising their kids and allowing them to be themselves. So if we could support parents, and being better parents, not that it's good or bad, but there is ways that we can allow children to be more themselves. Then, we'll stop like trauma from happening, more trauma, because what happens is we experience things and we take them in and hold them energetically in our body, and eventually, it just really, a lot of times it hinders us from being us fully and expressing ourselves fully, because the way we perceive things, that we're not accepted for who we are. So thank you for sharing that, because it's really supportive even for relationships, adult to adult, or however it could be supportive. And you actually are offering that as a free gift, right?
Yes, I have the Iceberg available as a download, and I believe you will be sharing the link with your listeners.
Yes, I will. So thank you so much for sharing that. And is there anything else that your heart feels called to share? I love everything that you've touched on, and I just appreciate you being here today and sharing your truth and your story, and just a little bit about what you've learned on your journey. Just a little bit. I'm like, I know there's so much I would love to have you share, because I so relate and connect with you.
I think that one of the things I want to leave people with is, when you resist something that happens in your life, when some undesirable outcome has presented itself to you and you resist it, we were talking about accepting it versus resisting it. When you resist it, you're bringing suffering onto yourself. When you accept it, you ease yourself of the suffering. It doesn't mean, accepting it doesn't mean that the situation is miraculously solved, or the challenge and difficulty and hardship that you have to go through is not there anymore. It just means that the way you show up inside of that challenge is totally different.
Yes.
So if your listeners can just learn how to see challenge as an opportunity to learn and grow, and stop resisting it, and welcome it as, well, I didn't really want this outcome, but this is what I have, and I'm going to learn and grow through it. And if you can approach all challenges in life like that, your life will be so much more pleasant. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean you're never going to have problems. It just means as they arise, you're just going to flow through them much more easily.
I think that's a huge key. And for me, I kind of word it like just not judging the situation. And it takes time to shift into that, where it's like to be accepting of it. Just not, we're judging it, thinking it's good or bad, when ultimately it's a part of our life that is going to support us in some way, shape, or another. And it doesn't always feel good. It doesn't always feel good, for sure. I've definitely been through some experiences myself where it's like, when I'm going through it, it's challenging. And later on, I've realized, if I could have just accepted that more, I wouldn't have caused so much struggle through the process of it. But thank you so much for sharing that. And is there any last words that you'd like to share?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
Okay, I just want to thank you so much again for being here, spending this time to connect and support people on your journey, and doing this journey.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you.
So thank you again, and I hope everybody receives this and connect with her. She's great, and she has so much value to offer people. So if you feel called and you connect with her in any way, reach out, because she would love to support you on your journey. So thank you again, and see ya.
Bye.